Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We continue with a panel discussion on green materials transforming constructions. As you can see, the stage is prepared now for panelists, so let me introduce them. Diego Santamaria Razo, partner and vice president at the Boston Consulting Group. Yes, please. Janne Rauramo, executive VP at Betolar. Franc Mouwen, EIC Program Manager at European Innovation Council. And our moderator, Fischer, Managing Partner at Osorno Capital. Gentlemen, welcome, and the stage is yours now.
Thank you. So why don't we quickly just do a quick round of introductions? Do you want to start off?
Yeah, my name is Franc Mouwen. I work as a program manager, architecture, engineering and construction for the European Innovation Council.
Go ahead.
My name is Diego Santamaria, and I work as partner in the Boston Consulting Group in the Deep Tech team, and I'm responsible for green materials. I'm relatively new in the organization, but I worked in CRH, one of the building industry companies, for 7 years leading innovation in Europe.
Hello, everybody. My name is Janne Rauramo, and I'm from Betolar, a Finnish materials technology company, working as Executive Vice President of Strategic Partnerships.
Awesome. And my name is Fischer, Managing Partner of Osorno Capital, where we focus on affordable and workforce housing in mountain communities, also an advisor to Turner Construction's Entrepreneur in Residence program. So why don't we take a couple minutes here and kick it off. You know, the term green materials is thrown around across industries and the media. Franc, can you kick us off by defining what green materials are in context of construction and what makes them different than traditional construction materials?
Yeah, I think it's important that we zoom out a little bit. We are in a tech forum anyway, so and maybe look at what we try to achieve. So what we try to achieve is, of course, a decarbonization of our sector. And maybe green means more than decarbonization. It does also have other elements of sustainability, but let's focus on the decarbonization bit. I think I like to use a little framework of what we can do if I navigate this complex field. I think we can decarbonize from the demand side, so use less materials or alternative materials by designing smarter, for example. In fact, this is one of the challenges in European Innovation Council for this year. So there was a budget for 100 million euro in computational design, digitalized fabrication, in order to use less materials or alternative materials. I think it's also important, the point I would like to make here is that I think the allocation of materials in an architectural or design expression has a lot to do with data as well. I think data and material allocation are intrinsically combined. So from the supply side, we can also decarbonize, and I think other panels have also done it, and I think we will look further into it. But this is decarbonizing the materials themselves or come up with alternative materials. And maybe lastly, is decarbonizing from the inventory side. So look at the buildings we have already. You mentioned, for example, there's a big move in San Francisco to repurpose buildings that are already there. I mean, the greenest material is the one which is already in place.
May I add something? From the materials perspective, it is really important that we have a baseline. So the baseline, in the case of construction, the EPDs, the analysis of the embodied carbon and energy within the materials will let us know and understand where and when materials become green in comparison to a reference. So green materials cannot be just a category of materials that have a validity everywhere at any time. Green materials require a reference and could be green in one country, but not jet green in the other one. And that somehow opens the possibility of understanding the dynamics of introducing new materials into existing markets with a different perspective than a material that exists for every purpose as today concrete is. So green materials require a local reference. Continue. And I think that's fundamental for the next part of the discussion.
Yeah, I also think that it's really important to kind of get the context where zoom out, like Franc said, to the fact that we're using concrete as in majority of the world as a major building material, and of course cement is part of concrete, and it makes up around 7-8% of the CO2 emissions in the world, and and it's a really good material, and it's been used for 100 years. We just talked about it with Diego here, that just before this panel, that if cement was brought up today, we would have problems having it accepted, because if there was no background, if there was nothing, no baseline, it would be really hard to bring a new material to the game today. And this is why it's a very complex issue, as Franc said here, and we try to somehow navigate it together in this panel.
So you bring up concrete. Diego, can you walk us through the manufacturing process and supply chain of concrete currently? And are there, examples of companies out there now that are, call it, greenifying that process? And who are they, and why are they succeeding, do you think?
Yeah, that's the reason why I wanted to introduce the EPD. The whole manufacturing process of concrete is quite complex. Like, in general, people tend to confuse concrete with cement. They think they're the same. I'm assuming here in this audience people know the difference, but still I want to go through the production process of it, because it starts with the way we extract the materials. So the raw materials we use to produce aggregates, sands, cement, and eventually concrete have an environmental impact in the materials depletion. So when thinking about green materials and thinking about the environmental impact of concrete and cement, sand, and aggregates, we need to think the way we extract, we need to think the way we transport it, we need to think the way we manufacture it and the energy we use, and then the way we use it. So those 4 questions need to be answered to understand how to improve the environmental footprint of the end product. Now, from a supply chain perspective, once you extract the materials, and starting with cement, because it's the most impacting from the environmental perspective point of view, when you extract the materials, you transport them from a mine into a crusher. Then you take them down from the size you extract into the size you need to put into the heater and the kiln. That already requires some energy. Once you put it in the heater and in the kiln, you decarbonize, you extract, you calcinate the material, so you extract the CO2 from the calcium carbonate, and that's the most impactful way. The most impactful part of the process is where you extract the CO2 from the limestone and then release it into the atmosphere. I always make the analogy that if you were a bread producer and you would be buying materials to produce bread, and then you would be buying 10 kilos of flour and producing only 5 kilos of bread, you would be wondering where is the other 5 kilos. And that's what we have been doing with cement for a century. We buy limestone, we produce cement, but the amount of cement we produce is always lower than the amount of limestone we buy, because part of it just goes away. Then once you have the clinker produced after the calcination process, you mix it with other materials and you have cement. And after that, cement aggregates and sand are mixed into concrete. Now, in all this process, you have different opportunities to reduce the environmental footprint. One is the traditional levers, which is artificial fuels, artificial or different alternative materials, alternative fuels. And those things will reduce marginally the amount of CO2 you will emit. So partially, it will help to make the process more efficient, and partially, it will make the cement less impactful, because you might be selecting the right raw materials that have a lower content of CO2. Now, those things are, I would say, done by most of the large cement companies. It's day-to-day activities. When you get things into a more disruptive level, then you can start introducing, by example, the use of artificial intelligence in the manufacturing process. There are companies, by example, as AI Semi is a company supporting cement manufacturers, improving the production process to make sure that the stability of the temperature is more constant, reducing the free lime amount and other kind of very technical details of cement production, but that eventually reduce the amount of CO2 you release because of fuel utilization. Then you move to the next level of startup and disruption, and you get into concrete. And concrete requires a binder. In the case of traditional concrete, it's cement. You can substitute the cement, the traditional ordinary Portland cement, with different cement mixes, and those cement mixes could be either completely alternative, like in the case of Betolar, Sivo, Green Sem, Hofmann Green, all those companies producing different alternative binders that have limitations in terms of applications because of the alkalinity or because of other technical reasons, but help reducing the environmental footprint of concrete. The next level of improvement is utilization of artificial intelligence in concrete design, because you can reduce the cement content. That's something that can help you achieve 10, 20% CO2 reduction. And then the final objective is actually transforming CO2 into a mineral, which is bringing the cement, the CO2 back to the limestone. And that's the carbon utilization technologies. There are plenty of them. You have carbon built, carbicrete, you have carbstone, you have Solidia, which is a bit different, but different technologies that are there in the market available to reduce the CO2 impact of cement. So this whole process offers already alternatives in the space.
Awesome. And Frank, are there certain companies you see out there that are focusing on different parts of that supply chain that are doing really well, that you think they could be a model for success for entrepreneurs and corporates out here?
You mean in the EIC portfolio?
Not specifically in the portfolio, but just in general.
Yeah, the excellent explanation of the whole supply chain also gives many levers where we can innovate, right? So there's one company within the EIC portfolio, which I know probably best to as an example, is a French company that is looking into using calcined clay as to decarbonize. But also, again, from a holistic point of view, looking at the other side, to reduce the amount of materials, we have companies that are looking into artificial intelligence to really, with algorithms to use less of all the materials. I mean, this is perhaps cement and concrete, but we have also other materials we can deploy in a more efficient way. Yeah.
Do you want to jump in here, or? Okay, awesome. So we've spoken about some great examples of companies in the aggregate and sand space. If I'm an entrepreneur, how do I become the next version of these? How do I bring a new green material to market and really commercialize it? So I've got this pie in the sky idea. How do I bring it to market?
Well, I've been trying to do that for the last 4 years, so I guess I have some experience at least, and I've made some of the mistakes that are there to be made. My background is I've been working with a company called Betolar for the last 4 years. We are replacing or lowering the cement content of concrete, and it's been a tough journey from the angel investment to the IPO and to productization and go to market. And if I give advice, I would say that you have to have an executable plan. It's such a complex world that you have to have a good plan, but then you have to also be able to iterate the plan and to make changes and to kind of do the orienteering within the plan. But even before you start, there's issues that even when you have the great idea, you have to really understand that in materials business, you have to have the sourcing, you have to have the standardization, and you have to have the necessary parts of the value chain covered in order to be successful. And if you're too concentrated on your own little niche, then you might miss out on the big picture, because cement and concrete is a really good building material. We just realized only maybe last 15 years that it's harmful from the CO2 perspective, but from every other perspective, it's cheap, it's available everywhere. The logistics are easy to arrange. Everything is already set up, so it's like I'm absolutely sure that from 15 kilometers from this place where we sit now, you can order concrete or cement.
If I may add on a comment, I think it's often in the panels that concrete is and cement is a brilliant and very good building material. Actually, if you look at the ratio of functionality to CO2 emissions, it's actually quite very good. You know, the 8% comes also, and this I think an important element for our discussion, to the huge amount of volume that we are using, right? But in the ratio of functionality to CO2 emissions is actually quite low emitter as such.
Yeah, that's true. It's cement. Concrete is the second most used material in the world after water, so we use a lot. Then maybe final thoughts about the tips to entrepreneurs is that yes, you really have to be enthusiastic, and you have to believe in what you do, but still you have to kind of and you have to have the courage to overcome these obstacles, because in complex world you don't know even though the plan is great, you don't know all the things that you will face and all the resistance that is there. The materials business usually it's large volume, small margin. So there are very big players with huge balance sheets that can be cooperative. I'm not saying that, but they also have their own interest to protect, and this is why being a new player in that market is not easy. I think a good example would be Ecosem, who has made a deal for the blast furnace slag, which is an accepted replacement for cement, and they have a good sourcing deal, for a long-term sourcing deal, and they have been able to kind of build on that and kind of scale it up to a somewhat significant level. All the other examples that have been mentioned here, including ourselves, are, like in the big picture, still fairly insignificant. So we have to just work together to try to.
I think there is a really fundamental point where startups can really make a change. And it's the fact that, well, the courage of starting a startup is supported by a technology. Now, you as startups or startups owners always have something different to offer. The problem some startups have, and that's something I saw when being in a corporate and being approached by a lot of the startups with a solution, is that they focus on the technology and not on the market. So when looking at the market need, the solution for a market problem is the technology. So the technology is the enabler, but that's not what people should be selling. And when looking at the localization of where the technology is developed, it not necessarily is the same localization where the technology will be implemented. There is a very, very good example on the Dutch market, by example. They have this environmental cost definition or environmental cost declaration, the MKI, the Milieu Cost Indicator, that supports companies introducing sustainable materials by putting a price on top of the product when the product is sustainable. So the government is willing to pay extra money for sustainable products, and it's not punishing companies being innovative. When companies from different countries have a solution, I have this example, I'm mentioning this example because there were companies from Canada trying to sell a technology in Canada, but Canada was not ready to do it. But then the Dutch market was ready. So the Canadian technology came into the Dutch market need and implemented a solution there. So looking at the startup landscape, sometimes startups tend to look at their own markets, focused on the needs of what they believe is important for the technology. And it might be or seem obvious, but look elsewhere in terms of geography. That helps.
I think that's a great segue to Frank. You know, there's a lot of science and research going on around building materials and how do we make it greener and what's its effects. You know, how does one take that science that, you know, has proven to work in a lab and actually commercialize it and create a business around it?
That's the golden question, right? No, so just maybe one couple of words on what EIC does, European Innovation Council. When it was started 2 years ago, in all earnest, Ursula von der Leyen, who started it, opened it She said, I have a paradox here. So Europe is very good at spending a lot of money at cutting-edge, world-class research, but we are less good at making money from all that research. And that's what the EIC tries to solve, this bridge between science and market adoption using the entrepreneurial vector. We try to do that with 3 programs, Pathfinder, Transition, Accelerator. And Pathfinder is really is really research. This is not a company yet. And Accelerator is really closer to your world of the VC community. But especially if I look at the earlier stage programs like Pathfinder, we giving money or supporting it with money isn't enough, right? You also need to kind of morph or transform the scientist PhD with a brilliant idea into an entrepreneur, right? And or you have to combine the scientist with an entrepreneur. And we also spend a lot of effort and also money into programs helping the scientific entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurial scientists into bridging this gap, into building these capabilities. But having said that, this is one of the hardest questions you can ask. Yeah.
And I think to that point, cost, right? That's one of the biggest pain points that we experience on the developer or the end user side. Diego or Jean or Frank, are customers still selecting, at the end of the day based off cost? And, how do I as an entrepreneur or, even on the flip side, as a developer, get away from that norm?
I would say in general terms, yes. The construction business is very cost-driven. I would say for some specific solutions, for niche markets, the cost might be less relevant, and you can focus on functions, on aesthetics, or sustainability profiles. But that's probably where the understanding of the markets and the geographies becomes important, because you can get out from that cost problem when looking at the right markets. But unfortunately, yes, the scale of the production of concrete makes it so cheap that it's difficult to replace from a cost perspective.
I think there's a. I was also in a previous panel about CCUS. I think there's also an opportunity for the construction sector to expand our business model away from cost only and low margins. For example, if we are able to make construction industry actually a carbon sink, we could also, as entrepreneurs, access those new business models and the new value streams of permanent storage of carbon, which has a separate economic value on markets. That market doesn't exist yet in full maturity, but that could be an entrepreneurial vector to embrace for the future.
That's a very good point. I have to agree that, or add that the concrete industry has been traditionally also much based on on need, that somebody is ordering something and then we're delivering. We're not actually concrete business is not about selling the material. It's just delivering the material that is being ordered. And this is why when I've been selling our solution, and I've said that we have to ask for a premium from the beginning. We don't want to screw up the new business by selling it cheap, because there's cost involved in developing new things. And then they say oh, it's not possible. And then I say, well, do you want me to come to help you do it? And then they say, maybe you do have to, because we don't have the experience. Even though they're big companies or large corporations, that they don't have the means to kind of paint the picture to the next level. Because there is the demand coming from investors, there's demand coming from funding, there's demand coming from the society, and it is already affecting the construction value chain. But from untraditionally, the demand is there. We don't actually have to create the demand, but we have to just be able to price it right, and then be also aggressive in the pricing in a way that we're proud to say that we're reducing 50% or 75% of CO2, and there is a price to be paid, and we have to understand that as a society.
If I can add one thought, maybe, which is maybe underdeveloped yet, but I'm curious about what you think. But also coming back to my first comment, I think it was Joni Ive who said, technology serves a product which delights a customer. So in the end, the customer is paying for the product. But we can also, to move away from the price of cost only of the material, we can expand it by saying, well, the material allocation is an expression of data. So if materials are allowing architects to express in a much richer way, this may also maybe increase the willingness to pay of certain material innovations, right? So if we expand the business around offering the materials, we can maybe create more value.
Frank, you mentioned something about changing the mindset of the business model, and I think that's fundamental for startups. The trust you or startups should have in their own products should take them to the point in where their offer is not just a product but a service. So you can imagine a scenario where, by example, you have a substitute for asphalt and it's much more sustainable, but you are more expensive. So you, rather than offer the product as a replacement for asphalt, your company could be serving the road owner as the one who is going to check the maintenance service and is going to produce and execute the maintenance with the product. And the part of the offer is the selling of the product, which, by the way, is more expensive than asphalt, but I'm sure it's going to last longer, by example. Then you move from the business model of selling a product into selling a service, including the product. And in the space of materials, there is always a service behind. And it's a service that people, actually don't want to have the responsibility of doing. So municipalities or house owners you don't want to be the one doing maintenance. You would like it to be done by itself. Well, that could be the company itself who sold the product, who is producing it.
So to that point, you've got products, you've got services, you've got material. Where does the IP and the value lie in these, new companies that are being formed?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to navigate a little bit this question, but I think, let's just kick off and see where we get. But so I think one key aspect or element of or characteristic of our innovation we try to tackle in this way, which is different from, for say, quantum computing, which is kind of a blue ocean innovation, is that we are dealing with a transition innovation. Just like renewable energy is also a transition innovation. So on one way, we try to create IP which is future-oriented to create a desirable future, and at the same time, we need to say goodbye to a past which is undesirable in the current context of climate change. So the IP is really, into offering attractive new products which are economically scalable, pointing towards a desirable future. But this is, of course, key to all the startups to have this IP. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. We can kind of think about it that the value lies in the insurance for the future. We all know, we all agree who are here that the world is changing towards. We have a vision of greener future, and maybe Europe is front runner and US is coming behind, but the developing countries will also join, and this is something that successful companies. Like they have to take this into consideration one way or another, and if part of the price premium for now could be for the insurance that you're prepared for the future, because you can either be too early or then you can be too late, and those are the choices that companies face. Nobody is able to be exactly on the right time, whether it's this market or the stock market or any market.
It's like surfing a wave. I have a question. What was the time horizon of the idea to IPO for your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I think 5 years was like, the idea was 2016 and an IPO was 2021. So that was done fairly quickly. So it's not quick. Thanks. We had a very dedicated team to do the IPO. So I guess that. And we were in a hurry because we knew that the window was closing, so we worked hard.
So we've spoken a lot about, the entrepreneurial side and the startups. Let's kind of flip it to the other side and looking at the corporates and end users. Gene, how could a corporate or an end user, support these startups in bridging that gap?
Well, that's important. I think we talk a lot about collaborations and we talk about partnerships and we talk about co-innovation and all these nice words that in reality mean nothing unless we start like actually roll up the sleeves and start working together. And for the big corporations, I think it means that you have to look at the alternative cost. You have to prepare yourself for the change. You have to look at the alternative cost. That something has to be done, and you can't be good at everything. So partnering up with startups, with SMEs, and the large corporations, it's absolutely necessary in order to achieve the goals that we have set together. We all have talked here that it'll be really hard to achieve the goals of 2030 or 2035 or 2050 or whatever. But if we actually start today, then I see there is a possibility.
So just practical, how it works in the EIC also is we have a whole corporate program. Actually, one of our corporate partners is sitting here in this room. And we really try to expose our accelerator startups, sometimes even the Pathfinder projects to corporate partners. And this would mean in a preparation of 6 to 9 months, 20 startups are prepped in order to expose themselves to corporate partners. And really the objective is to do any deal. It can be an investment, or it can be tendering together, or it can be trying out a prototype, or it can be anything. Anything is valuable, I think, for an early stage startup. And this program has been proven quite successful. Yep.
And putting some extra flesh on what you were saying, the collaboration between a startup and a corporate is really unbalanced in terms of power. So the startup has a lot or has IP that needs to protect, and the corporate has the assets and the financial power and the access to market. And in a way, that should be the part that the corporate brings into the interchange of information. So the corporate has the access to the market and understanding of the market needs. What happens sometimes is that the corporates have a protective position towards their current products and tend to compare the new offer from the startup to the existing products rather than finding the differentiator of the new proposition for a potential market they could access. So it's a bit a matter of attitude, from a protective attitude into a really collaborative one where the corporate becomes a platform for the startup, and then it creates a real collaboration rather than a barrier for the startup to get into the market. I think many of the large corporates are doing or trying to do that today through open innovation platforms by working with the GCCA in promoting some of the startups that are becoming more successful and so on. But still, the feeling of protectionism of the traditional concrete space coexists with the need of improving this.
And to that point, Diego, when we started, you mentioned the value chain and the supply chain, and there was a lot of corporates across that value chain. So, how is someone not only supposed to get one company on that value chain to participate, let alone everyone else to be able to, make a product fully adopted in a market?
I'm not sure if I got your question, but let me try to elaborate on it. When a startup is coming with a very innovative proposal, it's not yet a solution. They know what the intellectual property they are bringing to the table is. They should be the ones being able to talk to the potential partner and tell them which are the counterparts they need to find. So if you are a startup in artificial intelligence improving maintenance in cement plants, and then you meet with the guys selling cement, and then you want to sell them your technology, they are not the right partners. So rather than starting selling the technology, startups should try to understand the counterpart on the table and verify if the persons they have on the other side are the right ones that belong to the piece of the value chain they should get in. Once they have the counterpart that is equivalent of what they are offering, they should be able at least to talk the same language. It seems very obvious, but that it doesn't go that way. Like most of the times, startups will approach corporates through the innovation centers or through the R&D centers. And many times these R&D centers or innovation teams will have similar developments and want to be protective. So that, well, the startup at the same time needs to be a bit more agile in the way, if that's answering the question.
No, that's great. So to wrap things up in here, you know, in the room we've got individuals across different companies, industries, entrepreneurs, corporates, governments, you know, who possess the power to really build a sustainable future for our world. You know, what's one key advice or thought-provoking idea, you know, you would give them to encourage the innovation of green material? Who wants to start us off?
Well, I can go. I'd say that Finland is I come from Finland. It's promised land of engineers and innovations, and maybe not the entrepreneurship and the courage to put your product out there, and you know, you have to have everything 100% fully ready before you're kind of you can kind of release it, and that's something we have to learn is to see what is a minimum viable product and how to find a partner to put that on the market and test it on the market in the real scale, in the industrial scale. We can do a lot of things in laboratories but do it in industrial scale is really different. This is why I liked what Franc was saying, that EIC is promoting any deal. This is the way I like to think about it. Whether it's investment or it's an order for a certain small piloting or something else. It's like we have to start turning it into a business. We have to, the gap between science and business, or it can't be combined unless we start somewhere.
Maybe in addition to that, I think entrepreneurship is a very raw, impactful, scalable way of leadership. So, you know, start a company, go lead, and change this world from that point.
And for me, the best advice I could give is identify your counterparts, know the market you would like to get in, and then never use the traditional materials as a negative reference, because that creates resistance. Rather, propose your new ideas as a complementary way of access new markets, and not as the solution for something bad. If you open most of the green materials today, by example, in alternative binders, the first thing you get is cement-free concrete. And, well, somehow that's creating a bad feeling, you know? It could be sustainable concrete. It's the same message, but from a different perspective. So just try to be fair towards the existing mature markets and emphasize your value rather than the negative value of the existing one.
Awesome. Well, we got a couple minutes left. We just want to open it up to any questions that we have in the audience.
Hi, I'm Johan Berrien. I'm a designer, and I thought about the possibility of charging a premium price for this product. And I think there is a giant possibility in actually packaging that product and telling the story about it and showing it. Concrete may not be the first product you want to show generally, but here I think you can really try and do that. And you can add features to that visibility that tells the story, and like that increase the value of what you're having there. The value is obviously decarbonizing, but there is the value is also the pride of living in a facility like that or having a facility like that.
I really like the comment. I can tell you, to add on to that, I can tell a funny story that like some people asked me not too long ago that how does it feel like to work in such a sexy business? And then I'm like, I never realized I'm in a sexy business, but I'm in concrete, so it's not like nothing special or nothing sexy, but the world is really changing, and it's changing fast towards where people want to be part of something, and that is making the change happen, and there is value that with the right storytelling can be attached to it, and I also honestly believe that even today there are enough customers or companies that are and society and communities that are willing to pay the premium for making it possible for the first movers to be successful. So I think you're absolutely right.
I think you said in a much more eloquent way than me what I tried to say with expanding this story. Yes, and designers tell stories. But just look in the room with all the startups next door. There's one startup that is doing this optimized timber constructions. So they use computational design, algorithmic design, and digitalized fabrication in order to create very efficient use of timber constructions. And they look beautiful. So they tell a story by themselves of a very efficient way of using materials. So I think that is a beautiful example.
Awesome. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, I guess I'll kind of add on to that question and ask you guys. So it sounds like, if we're looking at design and really packaging the value, would you agree that architects and engineers really kind of hold the key to pushing green materials and telling the story?
No, I disagree. Engineers and architects can make it happen, but I think whoever as end consumer and end user has more power on making it happen than the engineer. Like you could have a beautiful technology, super sustainable. If nobody buys it, it doesn't work. So at the end, I don't think the responsibility lies on one group. It's really a complex algorithm where policies play a role, market plays a role, but at the very, very end, it's the public who, with the right pressure, will make things change. And I think we're moving in the right direction, a bit slow, but the pressure is growing and boiling.
Yeah, I think that the architects and engineers are important, but that's been very hard. Like the board of directors of our company has asked me to move further down to the value chain to convince people, to convince the architects, to convince the real estate developers, to convince the communities, to convince architects and engineers, right? And then, yes, I can go and I can convince them. And they're like, all right, Janne, I believe your story. Where can I get it? And then, well, it's not available yet. And then it kind of, this is a chicken egg problem where that's why I think also that what we need to have is the different stakeholders of the value chain working together towards a common goal is the key.
Awesome. Well, just want to thank everyone for coming, and we'll see everyone soon. Thank you.